April 16th, 2011 meeting of Nevada Board of Wildlife Commissioners back to order. And first I want to check, we still have Elko on the phone, is that correct?
Yes, Las Vegas.
And Elko also.
Oh, all right. And Commissioner Vogler had called in, and he'll be excused for a brief time this morning until he can rejoin us. He had some issues. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Mr. Vice Chairman. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Suzanne, could you run through the roll call for us, please?
Chairman Raine.
Present.
Vice Chairman White.
Present.
Commissioner Cavan.
Here.
Commissioner Capurro.
Here.
Commissioner Howell.
Here.
Commissioner Macbeth.
Here.
Commissioner Shrun.
Here.
Commissioner Vogler. And Commissioner Wallace.
Here.
All right, first start with member items or announcements. Commissioners may present emergent items. No action may be taken by the commission. Any item requiring commission action will be scheduled on a future commission agenda. What do we have? Let's go on the phone first. Commissioner Macbeth, did you have anything?
No.
All right, here we have Mr. Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I got a couple items here under member items. I've got a copy. I read a copy of an article in Muley Crazy magazine. It was in the March, April, and I think it's one of the finest articles I've ever read. The article basically states how hunters are losing game, money, and participation, and I've got a few copies of it here. It's kind of hard to read because of the background, but it talks about predation, and it says it's been known for some time that predation by a suite of carnivores such as wolf bears and mountain lions will reduce hunter harvest by 90% or more. And it also goes on to state throughout the West, mountain lions alone are killing 4 times more mule deer and blacktails than licensed hunters. Really good article. It's one of the finest articles I've read. I've got a few copies of it here for anybody that wants them, and it's in Muley Crazy magazine, and I think it's an excellent article about, and all hunters should read that. I also have a report here, and I want to tell the public and everybody here that the Wildlife Services has just completed, or they're in the process in 015 in a predator program, and basically what happened is the sheep people up in there were losing. They lost 68 heads of sheep, and so they called in Wildlife Services, and this started as of April the 14th, and as of yesterday they've taken 13 lions in 015. That's totally unheard of in an area the size of a postage stamp. And for 19 days, they took 13 lions. And we tried to put a predator project in there, and that was turned down. But basically, I think this relates to, and I think you got to do the math. There were 2 toms that are 170 pounds, another tom that was 130 pounds. These are big lions. There were 3 young, and so I did some calculations. So if you multiply and you take 10 lions, and just ignore the 3 young that go along for the ride, not killing anything. But if you multiply it out, taking those 13 lions saved 520 deer. And that's as much as what they estimated was in the area. Because, and this is assuming the deer saved are similar sized animals. We saved that, and that's assuming they've been in 015 for a year. But they have to eat something, so that's taking some assumptions. But this is a tremendous impact of what they're doing in the sheep industry. And this is something that, you know, especially Washoe Cab, and we talked about that, should look at it, and everyone should look at. And for years, you know, it's been said that we don't have a lion problem in this state. Well, just read this. And, you know, and the question I ask, and I'm asking Washoe County when I went to their meeting, and I think every cab should take this, you know, does this make our game biologists and the agency look bad from a game management point of view, and that they don't know what's going on in one of their areas that's by not protecting our deer, and we got a drastic deer decline in that area. And we leave it up to the sheep growers to identify the problem and take action to cure it. They lost 68 heads of sheep. How many deer we lost in there? And I haven't found an answer. We talked to the Washoe County Board, and I don't have an answer on that. But I mean, obviously, I don't think our people really are on top of that, because that's one of the reasons I'm saying right now that we got a big decline in this area. And this is also in the trap line that just came out, and I think everybody gets a trap line from Wildlife Services, but it's not up to date. They're taking, you know, I looked through all the journals, and I can't see any place in history they've taken 13 lions in an area that size in 16 days or whatever it is. It's just unheard of, and I don't know where they're coming from, but, well, they're coming from California is where they're coming from, but we should be doing, you know, we should be doing protection of our deer all up and down that line there. They're migratory deer. They come into Nevada, but Nevada residents on the good years get a lot of beneficial use of those deer. But I'm telling you how many deer that many lions can eat, and somebody's got to start facing reality on here. I think the cabs have to start getting their biologists in tune with this and start asking questions why we having a decline. And this could be happening in other areas, but this is just sort of unheard of. So I wanted to bring that up just for all the cabs here. And the goal or the total is Stremler. You know, we put a project to him, Mike Stremler, over in the Fish Creek Mountains, and we were told that on the Heritage we don't have a lion problem over there. Well, he caught 7 lions in Unit 151, and here's some of the horns. And these are predator kills that he just picked up, just out there. And so you can look at these. I mean, there's sheep, there's deer, there's everything. And these are some predator kills that somebody's out in the range 365 days a year. This is what he's finding. I don't get out that much, and I'll leave these pictures if anyone wants them too. And so he took 7 lions in just a matter of weeks or in a month over there, and there wasn't supposed to be any lions in there either. So these, I think we protect a lot of game animals, sheep and lions in 151 by doing that project. And there's some pickup horns on that, and I'll leave that for anybody that wants them also. And then the other thing I had here was I wanted to just mention something to anybody from White Pine here? I just wanted to mention something on the White Pine on their agenda. You know, and I think I talked about this before. I think this is an illegal agenda. Now, we're getting a lot of open meeting complaints with county boards. Washoe County just had one because of the agenda and what we're doing. And so people are looking at the county boards, and, you know, I'm not naming people, but they're looking at the county boards with a fine-tooth comb. And this agenda, and it's my opinion, and because we've been through a lot of open meeting complaints, that it says here, Nevada Board of Wildlife Commission agenda is attached, and anything is on the agenda. I think that because of the open meeting complaints we're getting, the commission wants us to do your own agenda, not do our agenda, to make it legal. And the NDOW agenda tells the public what we are going to do, not what the cabs are going to do. And you need to tell the public, according to the open meeting law, you need to tell the public exactly what you're going to do so they know if they want to show up. By just posting our agenda and saying we put anything on there, I don't think that meets the spirit of the law, and it doesn't meet the intent. An NDOW agenda has never been attached to it's never been attached. It just says, to my knowledge, it just says that anything on the NDOW agenda is open for our meeting law for discussion, and I don't think that's adequate. And I'm just trying to prevent any more of these open meeting lawsuits against any of the cabs, because as Rex will tell you, it's kind of, it's not embarrassing, but it's a hassle to go through and get the tapes and get them to the Attorney General and respond to them. And and we don't need that kind of publicity for sportsmen in the cabs out there, but I think White Pine White Pine should take a good look at their agenda in any of the cabs, you know, and because I don't think that meets the spirit of the open meeting law from what I get. But that was just my recommendation to it. I think that's all I had, Mr. Chairman.
All right, very good. Yeah, I think that 015. I know he had a project was brought to us a couple of years ago about that to go ahead by a vendor, Heritage, and we were told that that was not biologically sound or something in that area. There's a lot of California bighorn and antelope in that area as well. California bighorn especially susceptible. 8 in 3 days. I think they said it started on March 27th. That's, anyways, quite an interesting development up there. Hopefully, we should get some help from the livestock industry. All that money none of it came from game money. Anyways, other member items, announcements. Nothing down here. Nothing over here. I heard a beep beep on the phone. Nobody came or left? Okay.
Nothing there here in Vegas.
Still there in Las Vegas. All right.
Mr.
Yes, go ahead.
Chairman, I don't know whether you want this brought up under this item or under the item that we have relative to the item 19. I'll throw it out there and you can decide where you want to hear it. The President has signed the budget bill compromise with Congress passing it. And a portion of that, there are two things in there. Number one, that it delists wolves, and I'm not sure exactly how that rider that was adopted reads, but it delists wolves from the ESA. It says in 5 western states that have verified populations. We, of course, received, and the departments emailed us a letter from that was a response to our November 16th letter regarding taking Nevada out of the DPS, and that there have not been wolves in Nevada, to the best of our knowledge, for at least 80 years of recorded history in this area. An interesting part about this letter from the Department of Interior, Fish and Wildlife Service, is that they really make no mention of the fact that this rider was included in that budget amendment, in that budget bill. And they must have known on the 8th when this letter is dated. But again, the other issue with respect to that budget item was that the money that was to implement the so-called Wildlands Initiative, which is one of the legislative resolutions that we have on our agenda today, was also removed from the budget. So there is some recognition on the part of Congress that there is a problem, and that the judicial system, by the way, my understanding is, as they did with the snail darter issue of several years ago, they eliminated the possibility that it could be judicially reviewed. So what the situation is, I presume, is that wolves are delisted. But as of when, I don't have any word on that at this present time. Maybe the department has something else.
All right, well, we can definitely ask about that or under correspondence, if nothing else. What else? Anything else? Go ahead.
I'll have some under when we do the wolf regulation. I'll have some information on what
that issue
Commissioner Capurro was talking about.
Very good. All right. Seeing nothing else on that, we'll move on to public comment. Persons wishing to speak on items not on the agenda should complete a speaker's card and present recording secretary. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes. Persons are invited to submit comments in writing on the commission agenda items and/or attend and make comment on the item at the commission meeting. No action can be taken by the commission at this time. Any item requiring commission action should be scheduled on a future commission agenda. In addition to this public comment period, public comment limited to 3 minutes per speaker will also be allowed on each agenda action items, but not on reports or informational. So, what do we have? I see we got several, 4 cards, but none of them state, I don't think any of them state number 10. Public comment. Come on up. Welcome, welcome.
Morning.
Morning.
Rex Flowers, Chairman for Washoe County Advisory Board. In response to 015 and the mountain lions, yes, this anomaly is, it's hard to fathom that this many lions in such a short period of time. And as I stated at our meeting that night, I will be doing a follow-up myself personally with NDOW, trying to retrieve answers for our public. And we will follow through on this. We take it seriously. As far as the open meeting law violation, the complaint that was filed, because there was not a violation, we were cleared. It was embarrassing, but the bottom line is that the person who filed the complaint was happy with the answers they received and the reason for the answers. I'm happy that our board has been kept intact without any blemish, and I believe all of you did receive a letter on that stating such. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, excellent, thank you. And, you know, there's been things filed and filed, I mean, on this commission on innumerable times, cleared every time, but nonetheless, I think Vice Chairman was saying, just if there's a way to not necessarily eliminate them, but narrow them, thin them down a little bit. Might make it easier on the AG's office. Hopefully we will do that as best we can in the commission as well. Public comment. Come on up. Oh, yeah, and I'll ask on the phone here in just a second, too.
Darrell Harwell, representing myself. I know later on today we're going to have on agenda transparency. And yesterday, what I saw here from the commission wasn't very transparent. I mean, commissioners didn't have the questions or they were using other commissioners' questions. Say this one, do this one. Not all you commissioners had the list of questions that you had to give. I mean, you guys had to make copies before it. Here again, it was comment that the cabs couldn't see the questions, that it was impertinent to the thing. So basically, it was upon you as directors, or the commission, to pick the director without cabs. We got all the information, and Raine, you said it, this is the time for all cabs to put in input. But a lot of cabs did, say one person. I mean, Washoe, if you look at our minutes, I tried to put in people, but then it was decided that until you got to hear the interview, you couldn't really make a decision of people that you could put. And as soon as you heard the last speaker, Commissioner Howell made a motion before you guys even deliberated. You guys did all your deliberation after the motion was made. Now, how transparent is that? Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just throw out one thing on that particular issue, and that was that we had the question list came specifically from the Deputy Attorney General. We all submitted questions to him. They were all approved by him, and that was we were told that was attorney-client privilege. Don't, you know, this is your list. Don't disclose this. We do what the lawyers say, and we like it, whether we like it or not. But, you know, that did go through the Attorney General's office and strictly with written instructions from them. So, we do what we like it or not. All right. Do what they like, whether we like it or not. Further public comment, go ahead. Welcome, Jim.
Jim Janay, Lyon County Cab. In regards to what Mr. Lent was saying a minute ago about our agendas, we have a minor problem here, and it's been addressed over the last 4 years. The commission puts out their agenda. I think I have looked at it, and in the last 4 years, I think there's only 3 times that the actual agenda that was put out is the agenda we go with. There's an amendment put out in it somewhere. We cannot change our agendas constantly. We try to schedule them so we can cover things. And it seems like whatever you put in there as an amendment is what everybody wants to talk about, and then they're mad at the county game boards because we can't discuss it. And so this is the reason. Now, I don't know, I have not got a legal ruling on it, and I think maybe we need to get one, because I've asked the question, can we put your agenda as part of the package? And I was told, yes, you can, and you can discuss anything in it that way. I hope that's right. But I think we really need to kind of work together somehow, because your 17 game boards are the voice for the sportsmen. And if you don't believe it, you should have been on the phone last night when I got home. I got 2 calls that just tore into me. Why in the hell do you let the commission run and do everything? You did not put any input into who we get as director. Well, we didn't have a choice. You did not come to the game boards and say, you know, what's your feeling? Who do you feel? But we are the ones that are getting chewed on. I thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, on the phone, who do we have in Elko right now?
Ken Wellington from the public.
All right, and who else is present there?
Staff is Joe Doucette.
Trudy Davis.
All right, do we have any public comment there in Elko?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Ken Wellington, for the record, representing myself and the public sportsman. I just wanted, I think the vice chair misspoke when he was speaking about area 015. He made a comment that the deer herds were at their lowest point, when actually at this point they are up since 2008 1,000%. Since 2009, there's 50% over the 2009 totals, and all of that support material to support what I'm telling you is in your packages that you have there. And yesterday I had problems hearing during deliberations. I did not hear if Vice Chairman had disclosed any personal financial before his vote at recruiting any of the candidates for the director. Was there any, could you tell me, or do I have to do that in writing?
This is public comment.
Okay. Thank you, that's it.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comment from Elko?
No.
Okay. Las Vegas, who's present there at the time? Commissioner Macbeth, and who else?
Paul Dixon, Chairman, Clark County Cap.
Excellent. Do we have public comment?
Yes, this is Paul Dixon, representing myself during public comment here, and phone calls that I had from sportsmen and sportswomen in Southern Nevada last night.
All right, welcome, Paul.
The sportsmen and sportswomen of Southern Nevada who heard through the grapevine, didn't listen to all of your deliberations and interviews yesterday, were concerned that the commission basically did not have a valid reason for choosing 3, not 4 candidates to go forward to the governor with, because as far as the people who were at the meeting and had informed people, there was not enough difference to have warranted not submitting 4 names. And so I'm recommending to the cabs out there as a private citizen that all the cabs think about submitting to the governor the fact that there should have been 4 names, and submitting with their cab minutes, which showed that we had deliberations, and that the name that was excluded from yours was the name that was included in almost every cab that gave a recommendation. Thank you.
Any other public comment from Las Vegas? All right. Anybody else here present in Reno? All right, close public comment period and move on to item number 11, approval of the minutes. It was fairly extensive minutes, fairly nothing, very extensive minutes. We're taking, anybody have any particular changes?
Chairman Raine?
Yes, go ahead.
On page 19, there's just a typo, I believe. In the middle of the page, it shows Commissioner Capuro voting twice, and I think one of those should have been Commissioner Cavan.
No issues with that change, Mr. Cavan, Mr. Pearl? You're not twins? You're not twins, sir? Just checking.
No.
Just, sorry. All right.
It's my other brother, Darryl.
That's your other brother, Darryl. All right. So we have that on page 19. Very thorough. Other changes anybody come up with?
I make a motion to approve the minutes as corrected on page 19.
Been properly moved and seconded to approve the minutes with the amendment on page 19. Everybody understand the motion? Did you hear the motion in Las Vegas?
Yeah, we got it.
Okay, all in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 7-0. All right, let's move on to item number 12, correspondence. A couple things. One was I'd gotten some correspondence. I don't know if the Mr. Secretary, if you could report on the we had a response that was emailed out to us about the response to the on the wolf issue letter that you'd sent out. Could you give us a brief summary on that, or?
Well, Mr. Chairman, Ken Mayer, Director of the Nevada Department of Wildlife, for the record. I think everyone has the letter. It really doesn't say much, kind of what we expected it would say. That Nevada's not part of the DPS. They haven't. They're moving forward with delisting, and that they would be in contact with us. I did have a personal conversation with the director of the Fish and Wildlife Service at the North American. He asked me what was up in Nevada and was wondering why the commission was moving towards taking the game mammal status away from the wolf. He wanted me to remind all of you that his agents will enforce the Endangered Species Act with a vengeance, and that if you kill a wolf, it's still under the Endangered Species Act, and it is a felony. And that he also encouraged me to bring the message back that when and if it's delisted and states become responsible for the wolf, that we're going to have to deal with the wolf advocates, and that having a tag and a hunt as a game mammal seems to be the most appropriate and reasonable way to manage wolves, especially in states where we haven't had wolves. They don't expect us to have wolves, but if we do get wolves, we should be able to take a more proactive measure. So anyway, that was his advice to us on that particular issue. And then I asked him why the letter had not, I had not received an answer to my letter, and then shortly after that we did get a response. So there is one other letter in everybody's packet. It's my letter to Director Abbey regarding wild horses. I think everyone has got a copy of that as well. And, I had a chance to talk to the Deputy Director for Mr. Abbey, and expressed personally our concerns with the wild horse situation, and he took it under advisement. So,
yeah, I did see that. All right, Mr. Vice Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I got two items of correspondence, and one is a little confusing to me. One, it was on the bear issue from a Rick Hallert, and he's talking about the anti-bear hunting, and it was signed by Janice Hallardo. And then I got another one, to whom it may concern, and it was, I'm probably wasting my time writing in hopes that maybe someone will actually take the time to read this letter, and it was anti-bear hunting, and it was signed by Janice Hallert. And so I just wanted to read that into the record and pass it over to the secretary.
All right. Go ahead, Mr. Allen.
At the last meeting, I was volunteered by the chair to send a letter to the governor concerning our request to get an exception from the regulation against making any new regulations that he passed. And so I did that. I sent it to the governor's attorney, and he answered me back right away, under what exception of the governor's executive order are you seeking approval to go forward? And I answered him back with several different items that under his executive order that I think were apropos, and I have copies of that I'll give to the Suzanne. And so far, since I answered him back, I haven't heard anything from him.
Okay.
Also, we have a
I thought I talked loud enough. Just in case. Oh. Also, we have some the Department of Wildlife signed on to a amicus brief in support of an appeal concerning the Hague decision. Is this appropriate time to bring this up? Because I have a curiosity about this not coming through the commission before this was signed on by the department.
Well, it's correspondence, so.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering, shouldn't the commission have been consulted before the department signed on to with these other groups? National Wildlife Federation, Nevada Wildlife Federation, Natural Resources Defense Council. These are all environmental groups, I think, and I would think it would have to go through the commission first before the department could sign on to that. Am I incorrect?
It was something you received.
Jeez.
Hopefully I can provide some more information on that.
Okay.
The Nevada Department of Wildlife had been involved in this case since 1991.
I can't hear you, ma'am.
Since 1991, the Department of Wildlife we've been involved in this case, and as an amicus party. So it's the Department of Wildlife who is an amicus party, not the commission. If we file any additional briefs because of your statements, we can certainly try to provide you with a courtesy copy before we file it, but the commission is not a party to the case, and that was why we signed on to it without it going through the commission.
It would seem to me that this would be something that sportsmen and wouldn't support this appeal. I mean, the man's won twice already, I believe.
All right,
we should
just discussing correspondence that he'd gotten. I guess we can discuss correspondence. I know I'd received this as well. I'd gotten a copy of it.
Mr. Chairman, we could discuss it at the, don't we have an update on the litigation?
We didn't schedule some of the regular things like that at this meeting.
So we could do it next meeting.
Yeah, we could put maybe put it on as an item.
And any of the commissioners can contact me directly if there are any other questions. I'm happy to discuss it further.
All right.
She said contact me directly, any commissioner.
Oh.
I'm sure that the people.
Can you go ahead, Mr. Schrum?
Good morning. My concern is, are we putting this off to another day before we address this issue, or later on this morning, or what are we going to do about this? 'Cause I'm uncomfortable with this.
Well, we're addressing the correspondence that was received. We're discussing that correspondence. So, in your discussion of the correspondence, you would like to see what happened? It's come before the commission in what format?
Well, I'm not really sure. I received the same thing, and I read it, and I just didn't understand. I think we're on the wrong side. If anything at all, we should be supporting Wayne Hage and in this thing. That's just my own personal opinion.
You'd like to see this come before the commission as an item?
Yes.
Okay.
We could put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
Yes.
Would that be, I see Matthew shaking his head yes.
Yes, that's exactly what you should do.
Okay.
Put it on the next meeting.
Let me clarify one last thing for the record. The brief was not pro or anti Wayne Hage. It was simply pro wildlife. And I think if anyone reads the brief, there's nothing in there that is anti Hage or anti grazing. So I just want to make that for the record.
All right, we'll put that on the agenda. That's definitely a matter for discussion, debate. So, and this, all right, so let's.
Chairman,
yes,
Raine.
go ahead, Mr. McBeth.
Paul Dixon from Las Vegas. When Commissioners Capurro, Howe, and Schrum talk, can you ask them to get close to their microphone because they're very faint as compared to you or Chairman Lent or others when they talk. And if they get closer to their mic when talking, it would be easier for those of us remotely, telephonically, to hear them clearly.
All right, we'll try. There's sharing a microphone amongst 3 people, so it's a little bit, we'll work on that. All right, also, under correspondence, I'd submitted a correspondence at the last meeting and was a response that I had written to the Waffle Mule Deer Working Group, and I did not see that listed or included under correspondence in the received, and I'd like to see that be included in the, since it wasn't included in this packet, in the next packet as correspondence, because it is something that I'd sent out, and it should be portion of the public record, and so if we could include that, and I did send that electronically, right? You did get that? Yes, the Waffle Mule Deer Working Group.
That was in the March meeting.
Yeah, I'd sent, given that out, and it never got included as, you know, the full copy of it in correspondence.
Right, it's in the exhibit file with the March meeting.
Yeah.
I could send it out. I did send it out to everyone.
Okay, if you could print it out in the correspondence received, because I know we get, you know, these letters printed out in correspondence, and that, if I need to resubmit it.
That was entered into the March.
Yeah, but it never, usually, those letters that come out, I mean, like, for instance, when the Mule Deer deal, when they sent one, it got printed our next agenda.
It was in advance.
Yeah. So if I could get it printed out in the next one, so that, because people ask, well, what did you write? Well, yeah, it didn't make the minutes. I was figuring it'd make it.
We did send it to the cab.
Okay. Electronically? Okay. So we get that just included again in the printed matter. Would appreciate it, 'cause it didn't, just because it didn't make the printed matter. All right, that was all I had under correspondence. I just want to make sure that one is as public because as what it was responding to. Anybody else? Okay. Seeing nothing, we'll move on to item number 13, which is review and discussion of Fondo buck-doe ratios in each game management unit for the past 10 years is provided by Endow Big Game Chief Gilbertson. It's an informational item. We had received some information here, some tables. Come on up, Chief. Welcome. So what do these tables tell us? What do you have to tell us about them?
For the record, Larry Gilbertson, Department of Wildlife. Okay, what we provided were all of the survey data for mule deer from 2000 to 2000 till last year, essentially. And it provides all of the survey data collected for each management unit in the state for that entire time period. And so you can see the total numbers of animals observed in the surveys, and then the Fondo ratios. The first one shows, I see, Fondo ratios, and then starting on the second page, 2001 to 2002, we started to project and show fawn adult ratios in the spring because it was a little confusing to some people. Because in the spring, the antlers have fallen off, and so you're just seeing adults and young. And so we start depicting them after that point as fawn adult ratios. Previous to that, we conducted more fall surveys in the state of Nevada and had a lot more fall data, which provides your buck ratios. And if you have a buck ratio, then you can take that buck ratio in the spring and separate out the does from that adult sample that you're collecting in the spring. So we would project it in those days as fawn-doe ratios even in the spring, because it was easier to separate the bucks out of the spring adult sample. But it doesn't matter either way. It's still showing you the production rates, and you can calculate. You can go back to the old ones and add the bucks and does together for the spring and get fawn adult ratios. So you can do it either way. But that's about the only difference I saw. The rest of them from the second page on were all fawn adult ratios. So essentially what we do is the biologists look at those fawn adult ratios by management area, and when we get down to levels of fawn production that we are of concern, that's when a biologist will usually back off on quotas. And then if we see, but that would be tempered by a buck ratio. If you had a really high buck ratio, you could probably go on another year with the same quota without affecting anything. A lot of the harvest pressure is on 2-year-old bucks, so sometimes the low fawn ratio might affect the actual quota the second year, 2 years later. You might back it off more 2 years later, and it depends on the buck ratio each year. But anyway, that's what the biologists look at mostly, is that spring fawn ratio to see what kind of recruitment we're getting and whether the population is stable, showing a short-term decrease or a short-term increase. And that's what they use to temper their quota recommendations each year. So other than that, I'm not sure what else you'd have questions about maybe.
I have a couple things. One is how are these utilized as inputs into the model?
They're all entered into the model. In fact, if you open up an individual model, you'll see these exact ratios all the way back to the start of the model. They're in the model. You can see most of the models go back to 1976, so you would actually be able to see all of these data for each unit in a model all the way back to 1976. See the fall and spring survey data right in the model. And then that spring fawn ratio is the one, of course, is telling you what made it through the winter, and that spring fawn recruitment rate is the number of fawns that are brought into the population that's left at that point to show the increase for that year. So those fawns are added right into the population. And we start over again from that point. Start adding mortalities to that base population, and we add mortalities through the summer in the various parts of that model, and then we have the winter mortality section, and we have harvest that we put in the model to, of course, subtract from the totals. And then again, the next year we roll around again and we come with the next year's recruitment and add the fawns back in for the next year. So.
All right, and I'm just I'm quite certain that all the ones that are just dashes have not, there was no surveys done in those areas.
Right, exactly.
And there are several units that, the 261, 268, those type of units down in the bottom of the chart that they've never been surveyed. So what do we do down in those units?
Right, yeah, we have a few areas in southern Nevada that have really tiny deer herds. And really, we've just kind of come up with, sometimes we'll put a population estimate, it's pretty much a guess based on, over the long term, we've harvested, say, 20 deer or 30 deer or 50 deer. And so based on our experience with other areas with that type of a harvest, we might just estimate a population for that area. So we do have a few areas of the state where we don't actually calculate a population estimate, and we just kind of give an average quota. And if it's real dry in the south, and we collect a lot of bighorn sheep data down there. So if we're seeing poor production because of drought conditions in the south or something, then we might back off a little on that quota in those 2 units you mentioned. And we have a couple of others around the state that
there's
are
several
small
there
like that we don't survey. We've tried to survey them a little bit, and their deer herds are so small, you'd spend hours and hours to collect less than 50 deer maybe, and then you wonder about the reliability of your
statistically unreliable.
Yeah, so it gets to be where it's not worth it on those. So
I can, and I can definitely understand, that you'd have to make just guesses on that. That's just one of those things that, if we're just, if when the information comes out, these units are based upon a calculation of this sort, and these units are based upon, honesty tells me everything in something. This is based upon a biologist's best estimate, because we haven't surveyed it. I can live with that. It just, trying to, I like to separate out what is based upon what.
Sure. So this shows you which ones we survey and which ones we don't.
Yeah,
so see it right there.
So that's, okay. Just trying to sort out how this relates to the booklet we get. All right, good question. We'll start with Commissioner Capurro, then we'll go with Mr. Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Then Larry, your modeling numbers here are then compared to the your modeling numbers are then compared to the on-the-ground or in-the-air surveys that you do. Is that correct?
The population model? Okay. Really, the data we're collecting from the field dictates where that model goes. If we're collecting good numbers of fawns, it makes the population grow over time, and if they're having poor production, that population goes down. So really, the population estimates reflect the data we collect on the surveys. And another thing we do look at from the survey standpoint is, we've been conducting helicopter surveys in many areas, most areas actually, since 1975 and 6, right around in there we started. And so we have some really long-term data collection, and sometimes we've had biologists who stayed in positions for 20 or even 30 years, 25, their whole career. So we survey the area real similarly year after year, fly the same areas, and if that sample size decreases dramatically, that biologist picks up and knows, okay, the ratios might look okay, but if the sample size is way down, then we start looking at that one closer too, to see if there's reasons for that, if it was just a survey condition or something like that. And then if you have 2 years in a row where you just aren't getting the sample size, then we might go into the model and decrease the overall population. We assume that something's gone wrong until we start collecting big survey samples again. We did that in Area 7 a few years ago, back around when our new biologist, Kerry Hubner, took over. Joe Williams was finishing his career, and he'd been there 20 years or so. And his last 2 surveys in Area 7, his sample size just went way down. It was the lowest he had ever gotten. And so right after Kerry got there, we looked at those 2 years of really low sample. And if you look back in the records, you'll see a couple of years where we dropped Area 7 population estimate down to reflect that. And then as that stabilizes and we see good sample sizes again and good data, then we'll bring that population back up. So that's kind of how we do the two things together.
So you're really saying that your modeling and the on-the-ground and in-the-air surveying work together as
Yes.
your results for next year, of course, will be dependent upon the survey results that you get.
Yes.
And if I understand correctly, if you notice a discrepancy there, then you'll make adjustments to your model.
Right, exactly.
Okay, thank you.
And one clarification on this is the couple columns, like for instance, our last page is 2009 fawns per 100 adult on the right, and then there's over towards the left, 2009 fawns per 100 adults. I think I understand the difference, but can you tell me the difference between those? Explain that to everybody who's reading the charts.
Yeah, on the far right, where you're looking at it says 2009 fawns per 100 adult. That should be from the previous year.
And then
it's if you go back to the page before and look at the second to the left column, it should be the same numbers there. We just have that on. These are out of our book, and we do that to compare. So we'll get like this year's spring fawn ratio, and then that last column is last year's, just for comparison. So we can kind of, that also gives a biologist a quick look, or any of us looking at it. You can look at that and go, in 011 we had 38 fawns last year, 48 fawns this year. And you go down, same thing, 42 and 52, and you can kind of compare, and that gives you a 2-year snapshot. We just stuck that in there for convenience, so you kind of get a 2-year look at what we got 2 springs in a row, and that kind of tells you, like if you go down to 101 to 108, there was 20 in 2009 and 31 in 2010. So you see that you're recovering from a bad one, and but that 20 will tell you that those are the 2-year-olds now, and so that might be something where a biologist would use that 20 to justify a lower quota recommendation on a year like that or something.
And just on this last one, the thing was it was 2009 fawns per 100 adult, and isn't that really like 2008 in the right-hand column?
We're at again, excuse me.
Yeah, that right-hand top column, shouldn't that be 2008?
On the last page, it's okay, because we have, see, we're starting over here on the left, you're starting with 2009 fall stuff, then you jump into 2010 spring. And so that the second to the last column is 2010
It's
fall.
2009 spring.
Spring.
Spring as opposed to fall. Okay, that clarification between spring and fall.
Right. Yeah, that can be really confusing. And if
Which
people are
one's
comparing the wrong numbers, what you want to look at is when you start on the left-hand side and you get the 2009 fawns at 58, and on that 011, the very first one, and then you go over to 2010 fawns and you see 48, that represents your overwinter fawn loss. So between the fall, maybe a survey done in November, December, and the spring in March, that survey, that particular area, the fawns only dropped from 58 fawns down to 48. It's only 10 over that winter. So, and that gives you an idea of how tough a winter might have been in an area just by looking at that change. And then again, that far right column is the previous year's spring, just so we can look at
spring.
Yeah, just the recruitment that actually made it through the winter. We can look at what made it through the winter 2 years in a row that way, and that we just do that for convenience.
And I know looking at it took a while to figure out exactly where those numbers come from, but I just thought I'd
Sure,
throw that out
and
for
people
clarification.
have done that before, and comparing the wrong fawn ratio to the wrong fawn ratio, you get the wrong picture of what the winter was like, and so that's important to make sure you got those numbers in the right place.
I don't know if anybody in the audience is following along, but that's one of those. All right, go ahead, Mr. Vice Chairman, and then Mr. Howell.
I got a couple questions here. One is, I need to know what you consider critical numbers as far as fondo ratios. You said that things reach a critical level, but what is your criteria for fondos, buck-doe ratios? What are critical numbers and survival rates before you do something?
Well, generally what biologists, what we look at when we're going through doing the process of setting quotas, we'll open up each model and we look down and see that recruitment rate, the spring fawn ratio, and when we see it hovering around 30 or below, then we look at other factors like what was the previous year's fawn ratio, and we look at what the the buck ratio might be. If you've got a really high buck ratio, you may still have plenty of bucks out there that you can still maintain a quota. But if the buck ratio is low and the fawn ratios are low, there's no option except lowering quotas. Pardon?
Give me a number. What do you consider low? What's low?
For
fawn?
Well, for fawns, we look at all of them around 30. When they're right around 30, we look at them more critically, and the lower they are below 30, we look at them more and more critically.
Buck-doe ratios?
Well, buck-doe ratios, that's kind of relative. Actually, the state of Nevada right now, we have pretty much high buck ratios everywhere. You'll see a few low ones, but those are usually, if you look in that 2009 buck column, the second column over, you'll see a few low ones, but those are usually special circumstances where the survey was difficult or something like that. But biologically, you don't need to worry about buck ratios in Nevada because, you know, bucks can accomplish breeding between 5 and 10 bucks per 100 does. So we never even come close to managing deer down to there. Most of our quota recommendations are based on expecting to have a buck ratio between at least 25 in the state of Nevada. Lately, we've been managing closer to 30 or more. In some areas, have buck ratio objectives up in the 30s and possibly even higher if I got looking. But like in the 80s, there was a push in the 80s because, you know, we went into the quota system in mid-70s, and by about the early 80s, a lot of people were upset that they weren't getting tags anymore because we went from buying tags over the counter to total quota statewide. And so in the early 80s, a lot of the game boards were kind of upset that they weren't getting tags, especially in eastern Nevada, and they pushed for higher quotas for a while. And so during the 80s, we often managed, for buck ratios, we would shoot for 20 to 25 postseason ratios like that. That would be our postseason buck ratio objective. And now, slowly but surely, we've evolved to where most game boards and most people seem to want our buck ratios to be around 30 and even higher. So right now, the buck ratios are plenty strong to make up for most low fawn ratios. But still, if you have 2 or 3 years of low fawn ratios, you've got to back off on the quota because a few years down the road, those cohorts are just going to be missing. And if you harvest them hard at the start, you're suddenly going to have that, you know, if you had 3 years, say, of 20 fawns per 100 does in a row, there would be 3 age classes going all the way through for years of not, just wouldn't have that many bucks out there in a few years. So you have to, that we look at all of the years essentially, and that's how we come up with our quota recommendations to try to take advantage of good recruitment and then back off when we see we need to back off to keep our buck ratios around 30 essentially is what we've been doing. So that's
I think buck-doe ratio, that's social, and
yes.
The county boards, you know, if they want to manage for trophies, they got to keep up around 40. But you know, 10 bucks per does get the job done, but the younger bucks get the job done earlier, and then they drop young earlier and maybe in better habitat too. And you know, so, and I agree that. You know, when the fawn-doe ratios get below a certain number, you should be concerned. And I got a question here, like on page, you know, this is just a bunch of charts. I could have got this out of the book. You just gave us a bunch of charts, but I wanted some comments on some ratios, and I'm going to bring up what Utah did here. But let me just ask you a question. Like, if you go to page, if you go to 2001 compared to 2002. And just take 011 to 013.
What page is that?
It's the second page. It's 2001 to 2002 mule deer versus 2002 to 2003. And if you go to 011, 013, you had a fawn for 100 doe of 40 and it dropped down to 17. To me, that would cause concern right away in that area. So what I would like to see, and I'm going to ask for some additional information, I'd like a graph of these things, and I'm going to show you what Utah did. And Utah graphed out these areas. I want to see downward trends. This just shows year by year, but it doesn't put the pieces together. I'd like to see downward trends on a graph like that to show with each area where they're going. Because, you know, we got some areas in here that show a downward trend, and I don't know what happened on it. And I think they, you know, instead of just giving us pages out of a book, we should show us some downward trends on these areas and see if there is any areas that we as a commission should be concerned with. Because, yeah, we could go each area like this, but it should be easier to put them on something like Utah did, and they gave it to the commission. If there is some downward trends in the last 3 years or something like that, we should know about it. And I'll hand this out to the commissioners about what another state did, and it makes it for the commissioners to see a lot easier. And instead of just giving us a bunch of graphs with no analysis of the graphs, and I'd like to see it in a picture if we could, it'd be a lot easier for us, because like I say, I took these out of the Hunter books. I had these myself, but it doesn't, you know, I looked at a lot of areas in here that were going down, and you know, we'd have to go through every explanation, but I'd like to, if there are some areas like Utah, 3 of their trophy areas are going down in the last 3 years. So they're immediately taking action to make recommendations to stop that. And it just makes it easier to get a handle on it. And that's what I'd like to have before we set quotas, because I'd like to see if we got any areas without going through all of the graphs each year.
Yeah, and I think in the past, we actually, if you look in some of the books, we used to put some of those graphs in that you're talking about and depict some of the fawn ratios over time and buck ratios over time. We have done that in the write-up, not in the back of the book, but in the actual write-up by area. Sometimes we have done that in the past. So,
and I think that
it's pretty easy to do, because the computer model will actually pop those right out. In fact, we have those in the model.
You're generating that right now, that book, right? So
yeah,
it's possible
working
to
on
throw
it.
any of that in there.
I know that on the fawn-doe ratios, you know, below 60, you might have a herd in failure, and when you get below 40, you should be real concerned about it.
Well, it really depends on the area. There's actually was some work done down in I believe it was Arizona, on some antelope populations that were in the teens that were growing. So it really depends on the mortality factors. You know, some areas can grow with real low fawn ratios because the mortality factors are low, and then some areas where you have high mortality factors, it could take 40 to make them grow or more. So, but normally we've seen in Nevada over the long term, if we're above 30, populations are stable or can be growing for the most part. So that's why we picked 30, just based on long term looking at it, all the areas in general, and it's just a rough estimate because it varies by area, like I said, depending on what the actual mortality factors are by areas. So.